guys, thanks for coming to the channel here. Actually, maybe I'll leave that on just so I'm a little more visible. I'll make this kind of short and to the point. This is my Black Panther Wakanda Forever reaction and review. It's going to be pretty non-spoilery. You don't have to worry about, I'll be good not to drop any. And that's kind of going to be one of the things of the movie. I mean, there wasn't really any big spoilers to drop anyway. I mean, there's like maybe one thing or two things, whatever. But, so first of all, let me just say, love the first Black Panther. I've loved the MCU for years. Everything through Endgame I thought was pretty amazing. And Endgame, it was such a high bar, this culmination of, the 10 years and all the stuff that kind of led up to this final push. And then, time with the MCU as far as like it developing the shows and on Disney Plus, and some of those have been a little hit and miss. I've liked some of them a lot, but what I'll say is with Wakanda Forever, I guess the way I'll put it, to me, is that the weight of the lack of Chadwick Boseman and the weight of the lack of Black Panther or the character of T'Challa was felt. And it wasn't felt all in a good way. I mean, yes, there's the memorial in the movie. We all know that. They show it in the trailers, so that's not really giving anything away. But it's also felt in a bad way. It feels like, for me, it felt like something was missing. It just felt like the heart of the movie was gone, essentially. And, yes, there was a lot of emotions being felt by the cast. And I'm sure in real life, since they knew, and they knew and loved Chadwick, that some of this was genuine emotion they felt for a friend that they lost. But I just couldn't help but feel like this movie, unfortunately, wasn't the powerhouse that the first one was. And I feel like a big part of that is due to not having the main character and the main star. What it really does to me is it shows me that, man, this guy made a huge difference and he made a huge impact, and not having him is felt in the movie. He brought a charisma. He brought a certain something that kind of elevated the material he was in. Whether it's, his character being kind of regal and, noble, and, just wherever the place that he came from, how it was written for him, as well as what he kind of puts of himself into the character. But yeah, to me, it just, unfortunately, the movie was a little lackluster. One thing I want to touch on, that I watched a couple reviews. I watched Tyrone Magnus, and I've watched, a couple other reactors that saw it just a little bit before I did. And what I want to point out, too, is that I thought some of the set pieces, I thought some of the action sequences, right, they were good. There was a lot going on, and there was some cool stuff and cool shots and cool moments, and certain characters had, their little thing. their moments, and a funny comment here or a cool action sequence there. But one of the things that I started to notice was that in some of these fight scenes, it kind of blended together, and it almost reminded me of how I felt during some of the action sequences during Infinity War, when they're fighting in Wakanda, and it's just like an ocean of things fighting, and you can't really even make out who's who and what's fighting what, and you're like, well, wait, like, who's that? Or you just kind of, it's just generic fighting, and there's so many hundreds of characters or hundreds of people in a scene that whether it's zoomed far away and you're seeing just hundreds of people kind of skirmishing, or whether it's a close-up, either way, there's so many people engaged at the same time. Like, there's one fight scene where the one girl who's like one of the head Dora Milaje, she swings and they do it in slow-mo, but she's basically hitting one person, swings, hits someone from behind, and then it like finishes and it hits someone in the face over here. So there's like 3 or 4 people that she's fighting, in addition to all the people in the background that are fighting. Like, she's in the foreground, but there's still other people that you can see fighting that are just fighting almost off camera. I mean, they're on camera, but barely enough to, be really in shot. And they're either behind her or off to the side a little. And there's a lot going on in some of these fights. And sometimes it's a little hard to make out, in my opinion, what's going on. So I'm just going to say overall, I liked the movie, but it was on the lower end of liking. I guess if I had to give it like a 1 out of 10, or like a 1 through 10 rating, probably be about a 5 or a 6. I felt the movie was long, and it felt long. Unlike some of these movies, like in Infinity War, where, you're on the edge of your seat the whole time, and you don't notice that it's 3 hours. It doesn't feel 3 hours. Or if it does, it feels, grand in scale, 3 hours, and epic, This just felt long. And there was a lot of introduction of, the Talocan people, and, there was a lot of that, and they do go into some backstory, so you do get some information there, of Namor's origins and his backstory, which is great. And a lot of that is needed, but I guess I felt like some of it ran a bit too long. They would sit in moments, sometimes a little too long. And I know, like, Tyrone mentioned it, and this is no, by any means am I, following his opinion. I just agreed with it. I thought the same thing. And that is, I was not a huge fan of the Riri Williams character, Ironheart. Is it a little convenient that right after, like within a few years after Tony Stark dies, that, she's inventing suits that are, kind of Iron Man inspired? And I'll say this, it's not really a spoiler, but Shuri is with her in a warehouse scene, and she sees blueprints on the board, and she says, "What is this, Stark Tech?" That's it. That's the only reference. And it's like, it's literally an Iron Man suit she's making, and they only reference, sure he mentions it one time in passing. What are you building here? Is this Stark Tech? Like, and then that's it. And so the whole rest of the time, it's just, I guess, either inspired by, or maybe, in this world that they have, the MCU world, maybe they, a scientist can find specs and blueprints of Iron Man, kind of Stark Tech, arc reactor, stuff for the Iron Man suit. Maybe, they can hack in or find something, and now without Tony to protect it, I mean, Pepper's still there, Happy's still there, so I would think, like, they would have Tony's stuff secure enough, and I know that's what part of the story is of the upcoming Don Cheadle Armor Wars, is that a lot of this stuff gets, like, a lot of Tony's suits and tech get stolen. So, I don't know. I mean, anyway, I thought that was a little kind of coincidental, and the character herself, her attitude, these kind of remarks and reactions that are supposed to feel more like us as an audience member, right? Let me see if it's still too dark. No, it's fine now. I feel like the way they wrote her character is that she's supposed to be the average, everyday person, as far as their reactions. Obviously, she's a, tech genius and, an engineering genius, very similar to Tony. She can build whatever, she's basically MacGyver, and she can, a paper clip and pencil, and she can build an aircraft or a NASA shuttle or something, whatever. Ridiculous. And I just thought that was a little convenient how they went about it. So that kind of lost me a little bit on the thread of believability, and so I don't know. I thought Namor was decent. He was pretty good. I liked his character. I liked his motivations. I liked his thought process that seemed like through a lot of the movie, I was like, yeah, I can kind of see that. I can kind of get there. Then I feel like his character kind of goes off the rails a little bit, like 3/4 into the movie, and then whatever, the way it ends was okay. But again, I thought the movie was okay, but this isn't, to me, like a Winter Soldier kind of feel, where it's like, I get out of the movie like, I can't believe this is what I just saw. It was such a good movie. You're keeping me on. I know it's a totally different vibe. It wasn't even going for anything similar to a Winter Soldier. But there have been so many movies that I've enjoyed in the MCU. The first Black Panther is one of them. It's probably one of the most enjoyable. But at the same time, and I'm not trying to take anything away from Black Panther, but what I will say is we knew as a whole, like the fandom knew that Black Panther was basically on the cusp of the next Avengers movie. We all knew Infinity War was coming. We had seen previews and trailers. So, and I think Ragnarok was either going to be next, or, if I'm not mistaken, right? Or did Black Panther come out after? I forget now. I know the end scenes, the post-credit scenes of Thor Ragnarok basically lead immediately into Infinity War, but I can't remember if it was Thor Ragnarok and then right after was, I'm pretty sure Black Panther came out next. And so then it was Ragnarok, Black Panther, and then Infinity War. So I'm not going to say that Infinity War helped boost the numbers of Black Panther, but the movie was really good. So you had a really good movie doing some cultural things, getting butts in seats that normally wouldn't go to see a superhero movie. And then on top of that, you add in the fact that this is, movie 20 going along, or movie 15, or wherever they were at the course by then, building up to Infinity War, and everybody was anticipating that. So you had this push, and so now you don't have either of those things. I didn't feel like it was as culturally impactful of a movie, to be honest. Now you do on the flip side, though, they're sharing the limelight a little bit. So now, and I will say this as a review, because this doesn't only have to do with the movie itself, but the movie-going experience. I did notice people in the audience of, South American descent, or, that looked like they probably were there because of the fact that the Taliban Empire is kind of like a, Mayan descent, or, that kind of a region. And so whether you're getting now new audience members that are going to, and clearly there were some people who this was their first MCU movie, and that's funny that you're jumping into the MCU now at this point, but hey, because the first credits, now I will say there's a mid-credit scene. I had heard there was no post-credit scene, so I didn't stay all the way to the end, past the credits. It was getting kind of late and I wanted to get home, but I stayed for the mid-credit scene. And these people who were all like over middle age, I mean, they were, you had not quite maybe some boomers, but you had people in their 40s, 50s, maybe 60s, and the soft credits are rolling. The first, little credits, the visual credits, where, there's stuff in the background and it's close-ups on all the names and stuff. And people are getting up talking and chatting and like, oh, it was so good to see you. I'm like, guys, can you sit back down? There's still more movie to see. And then the movie comes back on and they're like, oh. And so then they finally sat down and I'm just like, so the fact that the movie may have reached out to people outside of like the comic and superhero sphere, the hardcore movie fans, I mean, that might be a good thing, and that's great, for anyone who feels included by the inclusiveness of, like by them adding a new race of people into the MCU. If you associate with that race, if that makes you feel like, hey, I'm seeing me and on there, or I come from that kind of descent, then that's great. I totally support that, and I think that's a great thing. But as far as the black community goes, I feel like as a result of them having to kind of share the cultural spotlight, because now you've got it divided between the two, that it wasn't as impactful to the black community possibly as the first Black Panther. That's just my take. I'm not saying that for sure or anything, or without a shadow of a doubt, but that might be the case. So, I guess that being said, I'm going to wrap it up here. Again, I thought the movie was okay. There was some decent action in it. There were some cool moments. There were a couple good, funny one-liners. And again, they made kind of Riri. Her comments were supposed to be taken as funny. And they were supposed to be taken like if somebody in real life was in these situations, their kind of comment or reaction, how they would react. I kind of felt it was how they wrote her character in some, in those kind of situations. And then she was smart and, super smart in a couple other scenes where it was like clear that they wanted to show off her intellect or whatever. But so yeah, I guess with that being said, maybe probably 5 out of 10, honestly. If I really had to pick, I'd say 5 or 6, but probably closer to a 5. A little too long. I think it could have been cut down a little bit and felt like a better paced movie. Again, this is one of the longer MCU movies, but unlike Infinity War and Endgame, it felt long. Where those other movies that have been just as long, they didn't feel long to me. So whether it's the pace of the movie, some of the slower moments in the movie, but yeah, I hope you guys go to see it if you are excited to see it. I definitely would recommend seeing it, as some of the things going forward will affect the MCU going forward. There are a couple of things that happen in the movie and in the post-credit scene that are a little bit of bombshells. But at the end of the day, I will also say that I think if you're trying to stay in the know and stay up to date with the MCU, do you have to see this movie? I honestly think you can kind of pass on this movie. I don't think the stuff that was covered in the movie is going to be so impactful that you're going to be lost, like when you go to see Ant-Man, or if you go to see the next movies. Like, I don't think you're going to be like, oh my God, wait, what happened? Why am I'm missing all this stuff? I have no idea who this is or this is. The only thing is, if the Talocan Empire or Namor come back in any kind of way that are, if there's like a resurgence of the race, if they come back in some kind of way, you wouldn't really know who they are if you hadn't seen this movie. But other than that, so anyway, well, I hope you enjoyed my review. I tried to cover enough of my thoughts and enough from the movie without spoiling anything. And yeah, again, probably 5 out of 10. And I'm excited for Ant-Man Quantumania, which they did have another trailer for before the movie, and that's next on the list. That looks pretty good. Hopefully it'll be a good movie and kind of start the whole Kang thing that they're trying to do throughout different projects, Loki 2 and the upcoming Avengers movies that they're talking a couple years from now, and the King Dynasty, and maybe that even affects Secret War. I don't know. But alright guys, thanks, and see you next time. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, share if you like my videos at all. Thanks.